Hey CDA, and welcome back to Satisfactory. While Bob is chilling in the pool over here, we are going to have to do some work because last time we built this pretty awesome facility and it is now working at full speed. We have all the resources we need, but we haven't really made any progress in the last few episodes towards actually getting our space elevator progress up and running. So let's get to that. Now, first things first, I had to rebuild the space elevator, which is now next to our hub. And apparently this is also the part of the game where this game turns into Roller Coaster Tycoon, because these these hypertubes are quite fun. I built a few of these between our different facilities, so it's easy to get to the hub. It is also now very easy to jump into another tube and get to our storage facility. So basically all the places where we're currently storing stuff are now really easy to reach. Now this is just convenience. The tubes themselves are not necessarily neatly organized, but it will do for now. So we can just throw in all the frames that we already made. And the last item that we're missing is the automated wiring, which will be the focus of this episode. So what do we need in order to build that automated wiring? Well, we can look it up, and as we can see over here, we are going to need some cables, which is straightforward enough. We have plenty of those. But we're also going to need stators, and the stators themselves are pretty straightforward as well, luckily. We are going to just need some wires, but we're also going to need steel pipes. Now, we are already making steel pipes in the facility that I didn't tear down, which is our steel foundry over here. This is making the steel items, including the pipes, and we are currently making, I think, exactly enough, or a little bit more actually, than we are going to need in order to make our build. Now, I did tear down our entire starting facility, which means we are currently not producing any copper-based items at all anymore. So this build is going to have to basically serve those two purposes. First of all, we want to progress towards automated wiring, and we also want to make sure we have some source of things like cables, copper wires, and also copper sheets. Now, I have noticed that so far we need very, very little of all of those items. So to be honest, even my tiny starter build was probably overkill for the initial part of the game, because I had thousands of wires and thousands of cables and things like that, which, to be honest, was not the worst thing. You can throw them in the sink, but we are going to have to replenish that resource at some point, so we're going to make a tiny little build for that. And, well, maybe not so tiny, but we do want to make sure we can still scale it up. And I do think this area over here is actually really cool for that. We do have this kind of corridor in between that, I don't know, we might use for trains or something at some point. But for now, I think we can make a build over here, and it's very close to where our steel pipes are coming from as well. So that's going to be very convenient. Now, so far my builds have been quite minimalistic, at least the last couple of builds have been, but I actually want to try something more spacious now. Now, the idea is still going to be similar to what I've done before, mostly because it's very convenient to build it that way. But rather than try to stack everything up as tightly as we can, we are kind of going to spread around a bit more now. The nice thing is, because we have this resource node over here, we can actually funnel that straight into the facility. So we're going to have the smelting area here. Then we are also going to have to make the wires as well as the copper sheets. I'm actually thinking that we should make the copper sheets over here and then have an open area over there that we can use to stockpile things and, generally speaking, just have some room to work with, while going more vertical with the wires themselves. Then the cables can maybe be kind of on the roof over here. And last but not least, we are going to have to make some stators as well as some automated wiring. And I think we once again can do that maybe either on the roof or in a separate little building opposite to where we are now. Let's just build the first half and see where we are from there. So the first steps aren't particularly exciting, but I did think it was important to point out how I actually approach this. So I have these little smelters here in the left bottom corner, of course being supplied by one miner. Now this is exactly enough to produce 120 ingots per minute, and we're only going to need 30 per minute in order to make some sheets. Now 30 per minute is actually exactly enough for 1.5 of these sheet making constructors. So I put one of them on 50% speed, and that should make sure that we are exactly producing the amount that we're aiming for and still have exactly enough to make all our copper wires. So I'm in the process of setting up the belt that will actually import the pipes, but now I can also tell why it is quite useful to build on the world grid, because this doesn't align. It's going to annoy the hell out of me, but this does not align, and that's because this building, which is the only building that we've actually built that's still left that we did not build on the world grid, and everything else is on the world grid, but yeah, this isn't. So this is never going to align. Of course, we can completely rebuild this. Don't worry, I'm not going to do that, at least not just yet. But yeah, this really shows you why it is actually, well, not important, but it is very useful to build on the world grid. Because if, at whatever point you start combining your buildings, they will actually nicely line up. Now, while I was cleaning up this area to the side over here, you can see the belts are now going through the floors and they're nice and tight and stuff like that. I actually also think that this whole conveyor construction is really nice. We can put one of these walls with the conveyor holes in it. It's going to look really nice. It also occurred to me that we might want to expand the production a little more to the side. Since we are doing that anyway, we might as well take advantage of that and once again not do the same boring thing all over again. Now, in order to do that, we are actually going to have to split our wires in two different directions. And given what we want to produce, which is cables over here, we are going to need 120 wires per minute to go in this direction, and that means we have 60 remaining going into a different direction. Now, initially I thought, hey, this is going to be quite annoying, because the splitters are automatically splitting it 50-50. But, I figured out that if you put down a Mark 1 conveyor on one side, it will only allow that, of course, to put 60 per minute on that belt. And that means that the remaining 120 is automatically going to go into this direction. Now, basically that means that just by making smart use of our belts, we can actually achieve the split that we want to achieve. Now, there's one more thing that I actually just noticed while preparing for this segment, and that is that once we go into this tower and all the way up, I had a feeling I saw something just a moment ago. Let me zoom in. It's the photo mode making it really convenient to zoom in. I think that's actually one of those crashed spots that you guys have been telling me about, so let's go check that out. And speaking about lining up, I have now placed the assembler making the stators, but now I'm still going to have to transform that into automated wiring, which I'm probably going to do above this little part over here, where we are making the cables. That's not necessarily going to be a hard thing to line up, because we have the stators over here, we have the cables over there, so we basically have everything local, so that's why I was thinking of doing it that way. Alternatively, what we could actually do is do it on top of here, which might actually make more sense. And the reason for that is that we also want to export a couple of these items that we are using as ingredients. So that might actually be the optimal way to go, because we are actually going to have to create kind of a mini storage hub here as well, because we're producing so many things over here that we still have a small amount of overflow that we do want to be able to just grab and use in later builds. So yeah, I'm probably going to go above here, and then we also have to kind of make this look like it's not just floating foundations, because right now it doesn't look anything like a building or anything like a factory. It just looks like, I don't know, a foundation form of spaghetti. Not entirely sure what that would be called, but maybe a very chunky lasagna. Now I think we should be close by now, and yep, there we go. Oh, there is a little unfriendly critter over there. There we go. I really like my new sword. It's a lot more efficient to take care of the enemies like that. So can we actually collect something here? Well, we can collect a lot of wires. Not entirely sure I need those, but hey. It's like the game knew we were collecting wires. What else? Motors. Interesting. What's this then? So let's see, anything else of use over here? What's this? Ooh, okay. We actually need to power this up. Well, I think we can do that. Okay, so I pull a power line all the way over here, and let's power it up. Hopefully that doesn't actually kill my power. I'm not entirely sure how we're doing our power. Does this open now? Ooh, shiny. What's this then? A hard drive. Analyze it in the MAM to salvage its contents. Well, we just have to go and do that.
Data on the hard drive has been salvaged and can be repurposed to unlock an alternate recipe. Salvaging more hard drives will provide additional alternate recipes.
Okay, that's interesting. Let's see what we've got. Hello, ma'am. Let's see. How do I do this? Scan the hard drive? It's as simple as that. So we're going to have to wait 10 minutes. Well, in the meanwhile, let's continue on with our facility. Meanwhile, a little side note, is it just me or is there something very satisfying about approaching one of your builds that is still in progress? I don't know, I just like the looks of a build kind of coming together, not entirely being done yet, something that's very satisfying to look at. So if you feel the same, let me know in the comments. If you feel like I'm crazy, let me know as well. I'm actually interested to know if that's just me or if some of you also think the same. Okay, so the infrastructure is almost ready. We have the miner in the back fitting into the smelters down below this level. Then they go up with the ingots. Then we are melting the ingots into wires. Then the wires are being collected over here, go all the way through here, are being split up in such a way that 120 of them are going to this direction into the cable production, while the other 60 are going into here into the stator production. In the meanwhile, we have the pipes coming from the other side to actually make those stators, while the cables produced over here are being combined onto this belt, being lifted up on the platform that we're currently standing on, and then being transported into the assembler that is making the automated wiring. And we also have the stators down here being lifted up towards the same level and feeding into the automated wiring production as well. Now, in the meanwhile, we are producing a surplus of all of these. So we actually have two belts being exporting here on the side. And now I have to figure out where all the surplus items are coming from and how to combine them into a storage facility that looks at least somewhat decent. Okay, can someone explain to me how the sun is up but it's still dark, and more specifically, how we are still able to see all these stars in the sky even though the sun is up? I mean, that should kind of block out, even if it's not like the brightest sun in the world, that should block out the light of the stars, right? Anyway, I finished building the facility, and to be honest, I am once again quite happy with it. It would be strange if I wasn't, to be honest. But we've built this a lot more spacious than the previous builds, and honestly, that makes it a lot easier to get around. It's also, in a way, a lot more work to build, because there's a lot more walls, a lot more roofs, and things like that to fill around with, although I didn't do myself any favors by trying to not make it too blocky. So that definitely complicated a few things, although it also simplified a few things, because it actually made the power in this facility a lot easier to kind of weave through than it was in the previous facilities. Speaking of those previous facilities, just looking at all the different builds that we've done so far from a distance is really cool, to be honest. It really starts bringing the world alive. We have our little truck driving around here somewhere as well, and that's just really fun. Anyway, back on topic. Everything is hooked up and powered up, and like I said, it's a lot easier to get around now, and as you can see, we have the automated wirings going. We have a lot of pipes coming in as well over there, and you can kind of get an overview of what's happening all around the facility. Now, when we go backwards through our facility, you can see that I also left some spaces open intentionally. Why did I do that? Because it's a lot easier to kind of get a feel for what's going on. It's a lot easier to reach those places as well. And it's not too bothersome for the moment, at least when you look at it from the side, because I did put up some walls around the different levels, so it's not like you're staring into an empty facility. But you can actually see some of the bits and pieces sticking out here and there, and to be honest, that kind of looks nice from the ground as well. What I also really like is this little peephole here, where we can actually see the workings of the lower levels. And I don't know, it just brings the factory a lot more alive than when you just have the individual pieces of it. Speaking of individual pieces, we have the cable facility over here. We have uh, kind of the hub over here, where there's a lot of different resources coming in and going out as well. This is not entirely optimized, but these pipes will fill up really fast, and then this will block everything off and make sure we have the remaining pipes going into the facility itself. Now, to be honest, I've started to care a little bit less about optimizing the flow through a facility, because we end up not using the majority of the resources anyway, because it takes so long to build anything in this game, at least the way I do it right now. It doesn't really matter if it's not completely optimized, because you won't notice it. And the whole point of being optimal about your builds is mostly because that will actually affect your gameplay, but when it doesn't really make sense to really buzz around with these things too much until it's actually needed. Now, we can probably solve this, because I by now found out there's such a thing as smart splitters in the game, which do exactly what we're trying to do here, so kind of having the overflow go into one way and everything else into another. So we can easily upgrade this if we want, but for the moment I'll just leave it as it is. Now, like I said, we built everything a little bit more spacious than it was before, which does make it a lot easier to walk around. I also put in some of these walkways to make that a little bit easier to get to, but honestly that's not the biggest thing. When we jump down, whoops, suiciding here, there we go, I actually did put in a little door over here as well, and that makes it easier to get to the ground floor. Now, this entire ground floor is actually connected, so once again it's really easy to get around it. Now, I'm actually not entirely sure why this is not working at full speed. That's just because it can't actually get rid of all the items fast enough, which helps if you actually put in a belt. Okay, never mind me. Let me double check if I actually did that on the other side. Probably not. Nope. So, always double check your facilities, people. That will definitely make it a lot more efficient and not operate at half speed like it was just a moment ago. Yep, now this is all functioning. Good. And like you can see, this is a lot easier to get around, and I really like the looks of it. Now let's jump to the other side and see how we have our storage unit set up. And here we go. We have a nice hypertube coming in, and that makes it really easy to get back to our iron facility, no, sorry, steel facility over there, and that in turn has a tube back to our main facility, so that's once again very easy to get around. Now we have 6 storage units over here. We have one for copper plates. We have one for the stators. We have one for the wires. We have one for the cables. We have one for the pipes, and we have one for the automated wiring. Now, of course, the automated wiring is going to take a little while to actually fill up, but you only need 100 of them. So that's not actually going to take too long, and if we build anything else pretty much by the time we get back, we should be able to advance. And we do actually have a few things to build, because I have completely been ignoring the research in the MAM, other than the coincidental things that we came across. But it turns out that there's such a thing called, what's it actually called? Caterium, which supposedly is very useful, specifically for those smart splitters that I was talking about before. Now, to be honest, if you haven't played the game before, like I have not, and you are just looking at the tech tree, then it's not really obvious that this is going to be useful, but I've been told it is. So that's definitely what I'm going to focus on in the next time. And I do actually think we have a source of that really close, something up here if I'm not mistaken. Let's see if it pops up. Yes, it is. So there's actually a pure Caterium or region source node over there. It's all the way up on an island, so it's not the easiest to get to, but it's like smack in the middle of where we're currently producing, so we definitely need to take advantage of that, and we will. And it's going to be really easy to do that, because we now literally have all the things that we can produce. Not everything, where we can already produce motors, I believe, which we don't have any use for, but we can produce them. But other than that, we are actually producing everything that we can. We also do not have the heavy modular frames, but once again, we don't have a use for those so far. So, pretty happy about where we are now, and that should allow us to really get into the more high-tech things. Let me know, what do you think about this type of building, and what do you think I should be focusing on next? I think I'll probably go for the Caterium ore, but yeah. Also, by the way, speaking of the MAM, I completely forgot almost, but we have one thing to check out, so let's hop over to the MAM. And last but not least, let's check out the MAM and see what recipe we got. And the analysis of the hard drive is completed. Select your desired reward. Oh, so can actually pick. That's interesting. We can pick charcoal, which is making coal out of wood. That doesn't seem too useful, honestly, because I would have to farm the wood. Bolted iron plate, which I suppose is just a reinforced iron plate, but then made with 15 per minute. That's actually a high production, but it's taking in less plates by the look of it, and slightly more screws, probably, at least if my math is right. And then we have the copper rotor, which is once again just making rotors, but oh, it actually uses copper sheets rather than the rods and stuff. So that's interesting. So this is a completely different recipe. Again, it's a pretty high production speed. Right now I'm only producing, I think, 12, and I needed several buildings in order to do that, so that's interesting. To be honest, I'm a little disappointed that both of these still show the screws, because if I could replace this with anything else, I would probably go for that. But yeah, I actually don't know which one of these two is better. I do think these two are clearly better than that one, but actually I don't know what to pick. So let me know in the comments. I'm gonna need your help, guys. Which one of these should I pick? I can probably postpone it until the next episode to pick. So let me know in the comments which one you think I should pick. And for now, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will catch you in the next one.